Well, when I first heard about self-quarantining, I thought to myself, how is this different than my normal life? Hi, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. And gentlemen, I conceive of this episode as an opportunity for three career loners to coach people on how to live during stay-at-home orders in various localities and counties and, in some cases, countries. As we record this just today, the president or prime minister or king or potentate or whatever they call him in India has just told everybody that they should stay at home for 21 days. So with some of our fellow internetians, that's the term for people who are on the internet, stuck in their houses, I thought we might bring some of our experience to bear, not just as loners, but as men. But I repeat myself. Stephen Green, here's the deal. You've got a couple of kids, and there are a lot of people right now who are essentially forced to shelter in place with their children, whom they love under ordinary circumstances, mostly by dint of the fact that they can send them away for 6 to 8 hours a day, and then they only have to get them back for a short period of time before they say, shut up and go to sleep.
Go to sleep. It's bedtime.
Yeah, so any tips for our viewers or just personal experience that you can share on how to handle long periods of sequestration with these little humanoids?
I got to tell you, Scott, we had it bad for the first week. Colorado Springs here on the Front Range are really weird. You'll get these beautiful days in the 50s, and then somebody flicks a switch, and you're getting that damp, wet, thick, heavy snow, 4 to 6 inches of this stuff. You know, the stuff that's just heavy to shovel. Just that awful, awful spring snow. And so we couldn't even kick the boys outside. We've got two boys, ages 14 and 9. And by about day 3, we're on day 11 now, I think, day 12, something like that. On about day 3, when we had to peel them apart from each other for fighting for about the 14th time in 3 hours, we realized maybe we needed to be doing some more stuff to burn off some of that energy and such. And we've done some little things, but mostly the boys know I work at home. They see me work at home. They do this all summer vacation, so they're used to this to a limited extent. It's not that far outside of the normal for them. Heck, it's not that far outside of the normal for me. My working day ends. I wander downstairs. I pour a couple of drinks for my wife and myself. And Sunday was glorious. I usually spend Sunday having lunch at this pho place in Castle Rock with my best friend, Matt. This week, instead, I sat at my desk and played Hearts of Iron 4 for about 6 hours. It was awesome. I hardly ever get to do that anymore. But the important thing, I think, with your kids is to set the good example. I came with this theory years ago, long before I was a parent, and I worried that I was really full of crap, but it turns out I was pretty much right. I had to think long and hard about whether or not I wanted to become a parent to begin with. And part of that was, am I up to this? And how do you measure whether or not you're up to this? And you have to decide, well, what do you have to do to be a good parent? And the only 3 things I could really think of, it just boil it down to the absolute fundamentals, was think them to think critically, set a good example, and pray for the best. I really couldn't think of a 4th thing. The thinking part, that's just challenging their brains, and I find that to be a lot of fun. Setting a good example, man, that's hard. I'm a struggling human being just like anybody else, but I do my best on that part. Now, I want to set that thought aside for just a moment. I decided I was going to marry my girlfriend after we'd been dating for 3 months over the smashed wreck of my car. I won't tell you the whole story, but we were in a pretty bad car crash, and I was driving a mid-70s Mercedes. The thing was built like a tank, so we walked away from this thing with nothing worse than some scrapes and sore muscles. But we're standing there, getting out of this car, looking at this thing, and just like me, Melissa is joking around. And I thought, you know what? This woman can keep her head in a crisis. That's the kind of gal I want to marry. I've been thinking about it, and that's when I made the decision. Was right then. And here we are, almost 20 years later. It's yet another crisis. You know, you're when you're raising a family, living life in the real world, and all that stuff. Something always comes up. Well, this is a big one. But Melissa's kept her head on her shoulders. So have I. It also helps to marry the daughter of an Air Force wife, because she believes she might have to cook dinner for an entire fighter squadron on a moment's notice, which is what her mom was always having to do. And so we have a 7-foot chest freezer in the basement. We have shelves full of dry goods downstairs too. We did not have to do any panic buying. So in a sense, we're sort of small scale preppers, and we were ready for that. But in terms of setting that good example, let me get back to that. Melissa does it kind of naturally. I've got to think about it a little more. But the thing I do most is when I have those moments of doubt or fear, like we all have during a time like this, that I keep to myself. Keep it to yourself if you can. Don't show yourself panicking or crying or anything like that. Don't lash out at your wife or your kids because you have these concerns of yours. Talk to your wife or your husband about them in private. Don't show the kids that side. They don't need to see that, because they will learn from it and they will follow that example for the rest of their lives. So if you can just keep your cool while the kids are present, while the kids are in earshot, and have those moments by yourself or just with your spouse, I think that'll go longer than 2 cases of toilet paper.
Well, now to flip this over to a man who I'm sure has a freezer full of toilet paper in his basement. Bill Whittle, you have lived for many years as a bachelor, and then a few years ago you got married, and so now it's the two of you. Like a lot of people, you're probably, because your life is full of adventure, you're probably used to, the hurly-burly hubbub of the day and actively involved in producing content and talking to people on the phone and things like that. How do you think people can get through these times when they're not going into an office, they don't have anybody else around, and the silence becomes deafening?
First of all, I'd just like to clarify that when Scott says they're dealing with 3 loners, I can't talk about those 2, but in my case, I'm a loner for George Clooney. George Clooney's not available. They basically send me. And so I just didn't want anybody to get the wrong impression about the loner thing. I think, I don't know if I'm in any position to counsel people about what to do with, oppressive silence. One aspect of it certainly that I felt was, okay, we're all kind of off the hook in terms of delivering the work that we have to deliver today or for the next week or so, or 2 weeks or 5 or 7 years or whatever the recommendation will be. One thing that is I think highly recommended is if you're one of those people who are just not able to go to work or have been told not to go to work for health reasons, obviously, do what you can from home, but you might just want to just kick back and relax. I'm a big believer in the power of vacations, but the one thing that I found most restoring is not going someplace, is just plain vegging out. And, there's always that WKRP in Cincinnati marathon on. And as it turns out, this is precisely what they recommend for people if they want to maintain as healthy of an immune system as they can, if they should ever have to fight the virus. But I think a much bigger and a more important point, Scott, really like a long-term impact point, is that large numbers of Americans are starting to have a chance to experience the kind of life that we experience, and that is working from home, or at least largely working from home. Some significant portion of our work is done from home. And it's kind of cool working from home. I have the studio because if I work from home, I wouldn't get anything done. I just simply sleep or play video games like I do when I go home, after talking with my beautiful wife, of course. But my point is, I think that this entire pandemic is going to do 2 things that are going to be very valuable downstream. One of them is it's going to show people how nice it is to work from home, and show employers that a lot of work can be done from home, and have them figure out what can be done from home, and that lowers their overhead and so on. And And I've completely forgotten what the second thing was.
It's stay focused, I think, is the second thing.
It was stay focused. Stay focused at all costs. Do not lose track of what you're working on. No, the other, I remember now, the other thing that is going to be, I think, game-changing downstream is that a lot of parents are going to have to be homeschooling their kids for a while anyway, at least a little while. And the entire idea of homeschooling is going to, at the very least, people are going to be exposed to it whether they want to be or not. And some significant portion of parents, this might be enough for them to put them over the edge and say, this isn't as tough as I thought it might be. I just find it ironic, really, that parents who've spent an entire generation telling their kids, will you stop playing computer games and just go outside and play? And now we get to say, will you stop going outside for God's sakes and go in there and play some computer games?
Oh. Well, within the last 3.5 years or so, I've been working a full-time job in the public in a retail store. And that, what is like all of a sudden total immersion in my extroversion, when before that, for 7 or 8 years, it was nothing but working in my home office studio, producing content and writing things. And so I've looked at life from both sides now. And I've had an opportunity to enjoy both, actually. I really do love talking to my customers and my colleagues at the store. On the other hand, there is nothing like being able to get away and to get alone for a little while, to have your own thoughts, to be able to not be interrupted. But, we're in a relatively small house, and it's just my wife and I now. We evicted the children because of they've reached the age of majority, and it's about time that they took care of themselves. And so it's been great. Now, she's working from home right now. She works at a church, and then she's working from home. And today she had a conference call on Zoom. And so I was helping her get the computer set up. I let her borrow my little webcam so that I told her she had to make sure to wear earbuds. I felt valuable for the first time ever because I was like, hey, I know how to do a video conference. There aren't many things I know how to do, but this I know. So anyway, I got her set up. But later on, I'm in here working in my office and I'm thinking, hey, there's my beautiful wife in the other room. I think I'll go in and talk to her. I go in there. I cannot get that woman to make eye contact with me. It turns out she's at work. She's
oh, yeah.
I go over and I'm standing there. She's got 2 computer monitors in front of her, so I can just see the top of her head, over top. And I'm kind of standing there thinking at some point she's going to look up and see her loving husband and want to break away from whatever it is that's absorbed her attentions and perhaps embrace me. Not so much. So what I've learned from that is that there's something special about especially in a romantic relationship, and after 27 years, it's only become more romantic. But there's something about having a little bit of distance and then being able to come together again. In between recording episodes of this show today, like I snuck out and I went in and just kissed my wife on the forehead, and I was like, I like that I can do this now anytime I want. But she was, while kind and she had a wan smile, she was clearly annoyed that I had interrupted what she was doing. So I guess I would counsel you to find ways to get a little social distance within that constraint of your self-quarantining, staying at home, so that you're not totally in each other's space all of the time. And then you can get together and do things together. So, have another room, if you have one, where you can go and read or study or learn a new language, or as I've been doing lately on just for fun, developing an app for Microsoft's Teams to use on their platform. That's fun for me. That's exciting for me. But then it's nice to know that in the other room is this woman that I love. You got to reconfigure your thinking. You've got to, you can't wallow in the fact of what you're not allowed to do right now. You've got to say, okay, what's the cool thing about what I can do now? Like, what's the beauty of this current situation? It's not that I'm being deprived of something else. It's that I'm being opened up to the possibilities of an experience that I've not yet enjoyed. And what is there that I can learn about this? What is there that I can grow through? How can I enjoy it? And how can I be a blessing to others in my household as it happens? For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.